Every single week, I would take LSU's football opponent and I would dissect them statistically, and I would see exactly where they stand in regard to the rest of the conference, the rest of the country, and all of the important statistics that you look at. Certainly doesn't tell the entire story, but gives you a sense of what the opponent kind of looks like. I rarely did that with LSU. And now that the dust is settled, I wanted to go back and just kind of do that exercise with this LSU team and see what the numbers say, because I realize that a lot of y'all don't dive into numbers quite as much as I do, because I'm here talking about it each and every day, and you've got a real job to tend to while I yap about sports. But sometimes the numbers tell you exactly what your eyes see. And sometimes you look at something and you go, huh, really? And with the LSU offense, I would propose that the numbers generally told the story that your eyes saw. With the defense, which I will talk about in hour number 2, and there will be a piece up on LouisianaSports.net about it in the coming hours, the numbers told a little bit of a different story, and it kind of brought me back a little bit. And again, I'll talk about that in the second hour. But let's go into offense. And I realize that numbers don't play great on radio because you don't have it in front of you, and there's a lot of things bouncing around in your head. So I'm not going to go over the top into the numbers, but I'll paint the picture and then kind of give my commentary on it, because I think the reviews on LSU's offense this year, when I talk to LSU fans, are a little bit mixed. There are some that feel good about the direction of the offense, that like the quarterback, that felt like the passing ability was there, and that they feel really good about what's to come in 2025 with the LSU offense. There are some that think Garrett Nussmeier is a turnover machine, that Joe Sloan's in over his head, and that the LSU offense wasn't good enough this year. And so I wanted to kind of see what the numbers say, and I'll give you kind of my 2 cents on the whole deal. These are all compared to the rest of the Southeastern Conference. And once again, I feel like I'm tossing in all these caveats, and it is what it is. I know everyone didn't play the same schedule. I know everyone didn't play the same non-conference schedule. I know everybody didn't play the same in-conference schedule. Some teams went on the road to tougher teams. Yeah, if I take Georgia's schedule and I juxtapose it with Texas' schedule, you get a whole different kettle of fish. I get it all, but everybody played 12 or 13 games. I think that your proof is pretty well in your pudding, no matter what the schedule may have said. So with that caveat tossed in, let's dive into some of these numbers. LSU finished 7th in the SEC in scoring. They scored 30 a game. LSU finished 7th in yards per play. Now, when you talk about actual just gaining yards, total offense, LSU was 5th in the league. So you're looking at kind of the top of the middle tier of offense is kind of what LSU was at this point. And that's kind of what I saw. I saw a team that did a great job scoring points against South Carolina. I saw a team that did certainly a good enough job of scoring points against a tough Ole Miss defense. I saw a team that did its job against Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. I saw a team that really struggled against Texas A&M in the second half. I saw a team that really struggled against Alabama in the rain. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't a disaster. It was the top of the middle tier of the SEC offensively. Well, why? Well, it starts with the passing. That was the identity. And LSU threw the ball more than any team in the SEC this year. First in the league in pass attempts. They were second in the SEC in passing offense. They threw for 315 a game. Yards per attempt, a little bit middle of the pack. It's 9th because you threw it so often. Completion percentage, you were 5th, so you did complete a lot of your throws. And as far as just getting the ball in the end zone, LSU was 3rd in the SEC in passing touchdowns. That is a really good passing offense. If I told you entering the season, brand new quarterback who had started one game in his entire career, in regards to the Southeastern Conference, with Quinn Ewers and with Jackson Dart and with, what goes on at Georgia with Beck and with Nico Iamaleava and with all these guys in the Southeastern Conference. Connor Wigman was thought of in that way early on. If I were to tell you that you were going to finish 1st in attempts, 2nd in passing offense, 3rd in passing touchdowns, and 5th in completion percentage, you would go, okay, that's a good passing offense. And I think everyone would have taken that with a brand new quarterback and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas gone. But you well know the other side of this coin. Rushing offense, 16th in a 16-team league, dead last. Rushing attempts per game, 16th in a 16-team league, dead last. Yards per carry, 11th, not good. And I can promise you this. No team is going to compete for an SEC championship, compete to get into the 12-team playoff, and compete to win a championship, which is the goal around here, finishing dead last in the SEC in rushing. And once again, you know they sucked at running the ball. I don't know if you knew for sure they were dead last, but they were dead last in the SEC in rushing. And I know the lines we were fed about how the boxes were stacked and we had to throw the ball and we were checking into throws because we didn't feel like the look was good enough for run. Phooey. You can't finish 16th in the SEC in rushing. Absolutely unacceptable at LSU. And so you look at some of the ancillary statistics that aren't the nuts and bolts there, which are yards and points. Sacks allowed. LSU allowed the fewest sacks in the Southeastern Conference. And say what you will about the offensive line. And that stat I just gave you, where they were 16th in the SEC in rushing, is an indictment on the offensive line, unquestionably. But I can also tell you that if you throw the ball more than anybody in the league, which LSU did, and you give up the fewest sacks in the SEC, that's a hell of a job. And that's a spot where I expect that LSU will take a step back next year, pass protection. Now, a lot of those guys were gone in the game on Tuesday night, and Garrett Nussmeier was not sacked, and he threw it almost 40 times. So that's a hopeful trend there, but just I got to call it like I see it. You throw it the most times in the league, and you give up the fewest sacks, that's pretty damn good. Now, you look to another indictment on this team offensively. In 20-plus yard plays created, you were 6th. That's mediocre. Okay. In 10-plus yard rushes, you were dead last. Could not create chunk runs at all. Not a surprise. You ran it fewer than anybody in the league, and you ran it for 10-plus yards fewer times than anybody in the league. However, you did a better job completing 20-yard passes, 4th in the league. You would figure that throwing it more than everybody. But and this is a little bit of a weird stat, but I think it does tell a story. You were dead last in the SEC in 50-plus yard passes. Now, 50-yard passes don't happen very often, and you can't count on them. They're not a huge part of anybody's offense, although Ole Miss creates a lot of them. But I would, in my estimation, if you are seeing stacked boxes, as they're telling me, that's why we can't run the ball, because the box is stacked, and your passing game is productive as anybody in the league, and you can't bust the top off, that's a problem. It might be schematic, but my guess is it's probably personnel-based, because Chris Hilton came in, and he did it twice against Oklahoma, he did it twice against Baylor. I think that's personnel. Hilton's coming back, Varian Brown's coming in. I think that number goes up next year. But again, it's another issue with the offense. If you're going to lean on the passing game significantly, and you can't create big, huge chunk plays down the field consistently, and you're telling me that there's stacked boxes, that's a problem. It's something they've absolutely got to look at. And then the final piece to this puzzle, your percentages, and then some of the other stats that we get through, like time of possession. On third downs, you were the best in the SEC. You converted 49% of your third downs. What that led to is a team that finished second in the SEC in time of possession. A lot of people say time of possession doesn't matter. I'd still like to win time of possession. I think having the ball is better than not having the ball. And I think LSU, although they couldn't run it, they could control the ball because they were as good as anybody in the SEC at completing short and intermediate passes, which is what you have to do a lot of on third down. That's why they were the best third down team in the league. Fourth down percentage, I don't really care about that. You were tied for 10th. You converted 50%. How aggressive was Brian Kelly? You were 8th in the conference in terms of times you attempted a fourth down. Here's a huge one, though. Huge statistic. Red zone touchdown percentage. LSU finished 14th in the SEC, third to last in red zone touchdown percentage. Only 56.6% of the time you got a touchdown. That comes back to the running game. It makes sense you're great on third down because you're really good at completing intermediate and short passes. It makes all the sense in the world that you stink in the red zone because you can't run the ball. As far as interceptions thrown, you were 11th. That means there were 10 teams that threw, that there were 5 teams that threw more than you, 6 teams that threw more than you. And then in turnovers, you were 6th, right in the middle of the pack as far as turnovers go. So the overview here is not jarring, and it wasn't meant to be jarring. It is what it is. You were really good at the short passing game. You didn't stretch the field well enough. You stunk running the football. It bit you in the red zone. And that's really what LSU was. And so if you're trying to get from a 4-loss team to a 2-loss team or a 1-loss team that competes for championships, you know what you got to do offensively. You have to run the ball better. That creates a better opportunity in the red zone. And you've got to find a way to stretch the field. And those two can go hand in hand. You run the ball better. Guys got to come up, stop the run. You can hit them over the top. LSU became one-dimensional. We're going to try to complete 8-yard passes. And that's what they did really well. And it led to a lot of third down conversions and good time of possession. And they scored some points. They were in the top. Let's see, what was the scoring offense? They were 7th in scoring and 5th in total offense. It was not a disaster. So I don't think that I would look at Joe Sloan's first year as a failure at all. I think I would look at it as flawed. And you know what the flaws are. You have to go get more offensive linemen. You've got to work on the run game and being more creative and productive in the run game with an understanding you can lean on a really good passing game, which is what LSU had. So that's the mission for the staff. One, in creating the roster for next year, which they've done the majority of already. And two, in what you work on in the spring, what you tell your guys in the summer, and what gets implemented in fall camp to go to Clemson and be a different football team. That's what's got to happen. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.